Well, welcome to On the Way. I'm Pastor Kevin. I'm here with Pastor Jeff, and wherever you're tuned in today, we're so glad you're watching us on YouTube and Facebook, or perhaps you're listening on the radio, or you are listening on your favorite podcasting app. We're so glad you found On the Way. As we like to say, we believe that everybody is on the way somewhere. Mm-hmm. Yep. You might be on the way to work. You might be on the way home from work. You might even be on the way to church listening to this. We hope that mainly you are on the way to heaven. And Pastor Jeff, we are continuing our series, The Searching for Satisfaction. Years ago, that great theologian Mick Jagger wrote those famous words, "I just can't get no satisfaction."
Yeah, I'm not. I'm not sure. Some might debate you on the theological aspects of
that.
But
I was teasing. Obviously,
he was definitely a great poet. How about that? Let's put it that way.
Well, in Matthew chapter 5, Jesus' most famous sermon, the Sermon on the Mount, begins with a section of scriptures called the Beatitudes, or we've been saying the attitudes that ought to be, and we've been learning that satisfaction is not found in having the right circumstances, but satisfaction is having the right attitude. We've learned that satisfaction is a choice, that I can choose to be happy, choose satisfaction in spite of my circumstances. And today, as we come to Matthew chapter 5 and verse number 7, we're going to talk about something that I believe a lot of people don't really understand, and they don't really think about it in terms of having satisfaction, and that is mercy. I don't know about you, but when I think of mercy, I think of wrestling with my brother when I was a kid, putting him in a headlock
and
until he screamed out mercy.
Yeah, well, for me it was uncle, but same thing. Same thing, yeah. I kind of think about that too.
But biblical mercy is different than that kind of mercy. Matter of fact, biblical mercy is not just softness or mere sentiment.
Right.
It really is love and compassion in action. It's not just softness. It's not just letting someone up when I've got them pinned, right? It's not just sentiment. Someone's hurting, they're grieving, they're crying, and you feel for them. That's emotion. That's compassion, but it's not biblical mercy. Biblical mercy is taking action. It is not passive. It's active. It's simply put, mercy is acting like God.
Yeah, and we're coming out of the passage in the Beatitudes in Matthew chapter 5, verse 7, where it says, "Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy." And what greater example do we have of mercy than God himself?
Yeah.
I mean, Ephesians 2, verses 4 and 5, just like you said, mercy, biblical mercy is not softness, it's love, it's compassion, it's action, it requires you to do something. And it says in Ephesians chapter 2, verses 4 and 5, it says, "But God, who is rich in mercy, because of his great love that he had for us, he made us alive with Christ, even though we were dead in trespasses. You're saved by grace." God's mercy forced him to do something. It forced an action on his part, and that was to make us alive through Christ and the sacrifice of Christ on the cross.
And again, we don't normally think of mercy in this way, but what that verse is saying is, if I want to be wealthy, if I want to be rich, if I want to have a lot of something, I should be wealthy, I should be rich in mercy, because if I do that, I'll be like God. That's what he's saying. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. So how does God show us mercy, Pastor Jeff? I mean, how are some ways that God does? I mean, you hear that term is used a lot in church circles, right? And it's normally like a sister of grace. Yet grace and mercy and grace. They seem to go
and a lot
together.
of people get them confused.
A lot of people get
them
confused.
And they're very different, very distinct. So I think mercy is God is giving us what we need, not necessarily what we deserve.
Yes.
It's kind of like when you're standing before a judge and you're pleading guilty and you throw yourself, the phrase says, "I throw myself on the mercy of the court." You're asking that judge to do something for you that you don't deserve.
And that's what God does. Because of our sin, we deserve punishment in hell.
Right.
And because of our sin, we deserve hell. But God, in his mercy, doesn't give us what we deserve, but instead gives us what we need, which is forgiveness.
Yeah, Lamentations 3 says, through the Lord's mercies, we're not consumed. You know, if God were to treat us according to our sin, according to, you know, if he were to interact with us the way our sin deserves, there's none of us that could stand before that. We would all be consumed. But because of his mercy, we're not consumed because his compassions fail not, it says in Lamentations 3.
So how's another way that God shows mercy? Okay, he gives us what we need, not what we deserve. But I mean, how else does God maybe show mercy?
Well, I think of it as, you know, in relation to my kids, a lot of times you have to show that tough love sometimes. And you can't necessarily, you know, just say, oh, well, everything you did, it's okay.
Right.
It's not okay. There's still consequences involved with the things that they've done. So I think God is the same way. Not only does he give us what we need, not what we deserve, but I think he also doesn't minimize our sin. He doesn't say that it's just okay.
Yeah, I mean, God doesn't pat us on the head and go, you know, there now, you know, you sinned, it'll be okay, no big deal.
Yeah.
You know, he doesn't, matter of fact, that's why Jesus came.
Exactly.
And died on the cross to pay the penalty for our sin. You know, people say, well, you know, God's not fair. You know, you hear people say it all the time. Like, you know, God, it's not, is it fair for God to do this or that? You know, and, you know, it's really a silly discussion because fairness is giving me what I deserve.
Right.
But again, God thankfully doesn't deal with me on the basis of fairness. God deals with me on the basis of mercy and doesn't give me what I deserve, hell, but I got to accept it, right? If I reject Jesus, if I refuse his offer, then there's really no hope for me.
Right. Yeah, and that's I think the key is God is willing to show us mercy. But we've got to be willing to receive it, you know?
Yeah.
It's like he's got this gift for us, and he's like, I want to give you this gift of mercy, and if you don't take the gift, you have to have some role in that as well. I mean, you're not the one that's saving yourself, but you're the one that's saying, God, I need you to save me. I'm accepting the gift that you're giving me. I need your mercy. And then the Bible says he lavishes it on us. He doesn't hold back. He just dumps it all on top of you. It's a great thought.
Yeah, and when I think of that, you know, I think of the illustration I'd heard a long time ago of suppose you get sick and you call your doctor and the doctor comes in, he's going to give you the test results. He looks worried and you say, Doc, just give it to me straight. And the doctor says, listen, I've got bad news. I don't know how to tell you this, but you've only got a few days to live. And you say, wait a second, doctor, you got to do something. I mean, isn't there some medicine? Isn't there some experimental treatment? And the doctor says, well, I've read in one of the medical journals of a very new medicine that's coming out, but it's very new and it's very, very, very expensive. And you say, well, Doc, it's my life. I mean, and the doctor says, well, do you have any money? And I go, well, no, Doc, I don't have much money, but Doc, you can't let me die. And the doctor says, well, let me see what I can do. And then, you know, there you are worrying and filled with anxiety for a couple days. About 3 days later, you go back to the doctor and the doctor walks in. His hair is all disheveled. His beard's got a couple days growth. His eyes are sunken back. His clothing's torn. There's blood on his shirt. His hands are trembling. You go and say, Doc, what happened to you? Where have you been? And the doc says, well, I went to get this medicine for you. I went to several foundations. I got some money, but it wasn't enough. So I went to my own bank account. I took out all the money from my own bank account, but I still didn't have enough. So I went and mortgaged my own house, and I got the medicine. And on the way over here, I had my son in my car with me. We're in an accident. We're in a terrible wreck. And the blood you see on the shirt is the blood of my son. And I just came to from the accident. But here it is. If you take this medicine, you will live. And suppose you took that medicine. You looked at it. And then you threw it on the floor and you said, Doc, if I die, it's your fault. Have mercy on me. You'd say, well, that's unthinkable. Well, you know what else is unthinkable? For people to think that they can hear the truth of the gospel, live how they want, and at the end of their life, stand before a holy God and say, God, have mercy on me.
Wow.
Something to think about. We'll be right back after this short break.
Have you been enjoying On the Way with Pastor Kevin and Pastor Jeff? If so, then feel free to check us out wherever you listen to your podcast for more episodes. For any more information, please check out our website at www.fincastlebaptist.org/OTW, or you can send us an email at otw@fincastlebaptist.org. That's otw@fincastlebaptist.org. Now back to On the Way with Pastor Kevin and Pastor Jeff.
Well, welcome back to On the Way. I'm Pastor Jeff here with Pastor Kevin, and we are continuing our discussion, searching for satisfaction, as we study through the Beatitudes and the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew chapter 5. And today we're talking about showing mercy. And you mentioned when you were growing up, you wrestled with your brother and
pinned him down till he cried, mercy.
So yeah, you won most of the time. Then
most of the time, he's 5 years younger than I am.
Oh well, there you go.
We stopped wrestling when he got
when he could beat you.
He could beat me. Right.
And the same thing with my kids. I tell my kids all the time, you got to be careful because my oldest, this middle child, he could take you.
He could take
Just
you.
be careful,
Yeah.
you know. It's But we're not talking about that kind of mercy. We were talking about a biblical kind of mercy, which is not just softness or sentiment. It's love and it's compassion in action. Because you can say you love and have compassion on someone, and perhaps you do. But I think if you really do, that's going to show itself in action. And God demonstrated his love for us by sending Jesus, by dying on the cross, by making us right with him through the blood of Jesus and through his mercy. And so we determined in the first section that God shows mercy, and he does that by giving us what we need, not necessarily what we deserve, thank the good Lord.
Yes.
And then also by not just, minimizing our sin, but saying, it's okay. That's what we try to teach our kids too.
Right.
I try to say, when someone comes to you and says, I'm sorry for fill in the blank, don't say it's okay. You say, I forgive you, because it's a whole different meaning there. Yeah. And as we grow in our relationship with God, we want to be more like God. And I think because God shows mercy, we should show mercy too.
Yeah, that's what the verse says.
Right.
Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy.
But I think there's a thing here we've got to grasp first, is you can't really give mercy until you've received it.
Yeah.
Because you don't really know what that is until you've understood that through receiving the mercy that Christ has given to us. But let's talk about that. We are to show mercy. Why? Why should we show mercy? I mean, somebody makes us angry. The last thing we want to do is just forgive and forget, right? We want them to feel the consequences of what they've done.
Well, and I think there's maybe three reasons why practically we should show mercy. I think the first is, as you just touched on, is because we've been shown mercy.
Yeah.
God has been merciful to us. And the truth is, if you have a hard time being merciful to other people, sometimes it helps to remember what your life was before you met God. God expects me to do for others, the golden rule, right? Do unto others. God expects me to do unto others what he has already done for me. As a result, Christians should be the most merciful, the most forgiving people around. When I think of all the dumb, sinful things that I did in my life and all the things I did wrong, and God still to this day continues to shower me with love and mercy. Again, I mean, just think about what God has done for you the next time you think, well, I just can't forgive that person, or they don't deserve it. Somebody said once, Pastor Jeff, we tend to judge others by their worst faults while we judge ourselves by our best intentions.
Yeah, that's so true. But you know what's funny? We do that for other people, but we don't do that with like our kids, for example. Our kids will have faults, and we'll minimize those faults, and we'll accentuate their strengths. And I think that's what we ought to do with everyone.
Yeah, so I think, you ask, why should I show mercy? I think first question is because God has shown us mercy. And then maybe the second answer is because we're going to need mercy in the future. I mean, every day we blow it. Every day we fall short of the glory of God. We sin. And blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. And I certainly want God to keep showing me mercy.
Right. And I think sometimes it helps us when we're reading Scripture to maybe think, okay, so this says the people who show mercy will receive mercy. Let's think about it in terms of the opposite of that. Mm-hmm. The people that don't show mercy will not receive mercy. That kind of brings it home a little bit and makes me think, whoa, hold on a second.
Yeah, really, forgiveness and mercy it's a two-way street.
Yeah.
And too many people only want to be on a one-way street.
Right.
Right. They want to receive the mercy from God, and we're all about that, but we don't want to give mercy. We don't want to be merciful.
I think a lot of times that's because we don't truly grasp how much mercy has been shown to us.
True.
We don't understand that. We have this high view of ourselves, and we think, well, God saved me or showed mercy on me for just a little bit because I'm not that bad a person. But once you get, it's like I tell people, when you get closer to God, He turns on the light more and more. And the closer you get, the brighter that light gets, and the dirtier you see yourself.
Yeah. The brighter the light, the more bugs you attract. I think,
true.
If you're having a cookout in the backyard, right? And the brighter the light, right?
Yep.
All the bugs are flying around the light, and you see it. And that's how it is in our life.
Right.
Once we get closer to the light, Jesus Christ, it reveals the bugs, if you will, in our life. It reveals the things in our lives that we need mercy for. So, I think that's why.
Yeah.
That's a couple of reasons why why I should show mercy.
I think that last one really kind of hits home with all of us, because I know, only those who give mercy get mercy. James chapter 2 says the judgment without mercy will be shown to anyone who has not been merciful.
Wow. Yeah.
That's powerful, and that's convicting, and I'm not going to lie.
Strong verse there.
My toes are getting stepped on by myself.
Yeah.
You ever stepped on your own toes?
Yeah, often.
Yeah. What else? Why else should we show mercy? Is there any other reasons?
Well, I think it goes back to this text that we're saying, blessed are the merciful. And as we've said the last few programs, that word blessed sometimes can be translated happy.
Yeah.
Mercy makes me happy is basically what he's saying. Happy are the merciful. The opposite is also true. Unhappy are the unmerciful. Proverbs 11 says, your own soul is nourished when you are kind. It is destroyed when you are cursed. Doing acts of mercy gets the focus off of ourselves and on the other people. And as a result, that produces happiness in my life.
Yeah, it's hard to focus on the things that are being wronged against you when you're focused on helping other people with and showing mercy to other people with the things that they need in their life. It's difficult to have that split focus like that.
And that's why I always tell people, if you're struggling, if you're down, you're discouraged, you're depressed, one of the best things you can do, because when you're that way, you're only thinking about yourself, you're only thinking about your problems. But when all of a sudden you decide to be patient with those who are maybe a little peculiar, you decide to help those who are really hurting, when you start doing good to your enemies, and when you start forgiving those who've hurt you, the clouds of depression will lift, and it gets the focus off of you. As you give more mercy, the Bible says you will be blessed. You will be happy. It's almost like what you give is what you get. It's like a boomerang. I don't know if you ever thrown a boomerang.
Yeah,
and
have.
Whatever you give is what you're going to get, is what he's saying here in this passage.
Exactly. So that's why we should show mercy, because God's shown it to me. I'm going to need it in the future, and it can make you happy. And now we need to talk about how. How do we do that? And we'll do that right after this break.
Have you been enjoying On the Way with Pastor Kevin and Pastor Jeff? If so, then feel free to check us out wherever you listen to your podcast for more episodes. For any more information, please check out our website at www.fincastlebaptist.org/OTW, or you can send us an email at otw@fincastlebaptist.org. That's otw@fincastlebaptist.org. Now back to On the Way with Pastor Kevin and Pastor Jeff.
So welcome back to On the Way. I'm Pastor Kevin, and I'm here with Pastor Jeff. And we're continuing our series on searching for satisfaction, and we're coming at it from Matthew chapter 5 and verse number 7, which talks about mercy. And we've learned that mercy is not what we think. Mercy is not passive, it's active. Mm-hmm. And before the break, Pastor Jeff, you kind of led into a good question, a teaser. How? What's 3 or 4 ways that people can just practically show mercy? I mean, something we all hear. All right, you need to have more mercy, but just practically speaking, how can I do it in my everyday life?
Well, we've kind of been jumping all around this. We've not really said it yet, but I think the first is just be patient with others. Patience is, you've heard the statement, patience is a virtue.
Yeah.
And I always finish that with that I don't have.
Yeah.
I ask God for patience, but I don't ask him to teach it to me. I ask him to just give it to me right now.
Yeah.
Because I want it. But Galatians 5:22 talks about the fruit of the Spirit, and one of them is patience. It's something that we need to do, and how do we do that? We've got to focus on how far people have come instead of maybe how far they have yet to go.
Boy, that's a great statement. I want you to repeat that. I mean, how can I be patient when my coworker drives me nuts? How can I be patient when my neighbor gets under my skin? How can I be patient when just seeing that person or hearing their name causes the hair on the back of my neck to stand up? How do I be patient? What's that statement again you just said? Because that's powerful.
Yeah, I said we need to focus on how far people have come instead of how far they have yet to go. Because if you do that, then kind of, you don't want to minimize that journey, and it's easy to do. I mean, I find myself doing that, and my wife has to say, but just think, last year this time. And she reminds me of how far things have come, and it's kind of a wake-up call for me. Focus on how far people have come instead of how far they have to go, and that will help you just be patient with others.
Well, how else can I show mercy? Just practically, where we live today, Pastor Jeff.
Well, you kind of mentioned one in the last segment, and we kind of do this with people that we counsel and we talk with that are maybe hurting or maybe looking for an outlet, is try helping others who are hurting, because if you can help someone else, you can maybe take that focus off of yourself, and maybe your problems won't look so big. maybe showing mercy to someone else by helping them who are hurting. I think it's important for us to remember that hurting people hurt people.
Yeah.
You say that a lot.
Yeah,
and
I say that a lot.
It's true. Hurting people hurt people.
Because sometimes just feeling sorry for someone, sometimes just having compassion for a situation, or, offering to pray for someone, quite frankly, it's just not enough.
Right.
Sometimes, you've, as 1 John 3 says, don't just love with words, but with actions. Sometimes we have to put some shoe leather to it.
Yeah, definitely.
Jesus said, "You've done it to the least of these, you've done it to me." So
right.
I show mercy by being patient, by helping those who are hurting. What's a third way I can maybe show mercy? Just practice.
Well, this is a hard one because none of us want to do this way. This is against our nature, right? When somebody does evil against us, the first thing we want to do is do them evil back, right? We want them to we want justice, right? So we can do good to our enemies.
Yeah, Jesus.
And it's easy to say, right?
Yeah.
It's easy for us to sit here and say this, but it's a whole nother thing when, like you said, you have to put shoe leather to this, and you have to do good to someone who's doing not good to you.
Yeah, Jesus said in Luke 6, if you do good to those who do good to you, what credit is that to you? Mm-hmm. Even sinners do that.
Right.
But love your enemies, do good to them, then your reward be great. Be merciful just as your Father is. If we want to be like God, we've got to be merciful. And as you said, this is the opposite of what society says.
Yeah.
You know, society says when people hurt you, get even, gossip about them, destroy their reputation. God says, no, you're not only just forgive that person, but you're to be nice to them. I mean, can you imagine if everyone listening, Pastor Jeff, tomorrow, when they went to work or they go to school or wherever, and what would happen when someone criticizes them, they complimented them back? Every time someone put them down, they built that person up. I mean, it would blow their minds.
Yeah,
It would be returning good for evil.
Right.
It would be being merciful. And our text says, if I do that, I will be shown mercy.
Yeah. Yeah. So those are three ways. There's a fourth way. And this one, I think, really gets down to the heart of it, is we have to forgive those who hurt us. And that's so difficult. I mean, we can say, yeah, I can be kind to them, but I'm never going to forgive that person. And I just remind people gently when they tell me something like that. I say, aren't you glad that God doesn't hold that kind of an attitude towards you and me? That he forgives us freely and generously over and over and over and over again. And a lot of times they'll kind of soften a little bit and say, yeah, maybe I should show forgiveness. And we do need to forgive each other.
When it comes to forgiveness and mercy, it feels right to receive it, right? It feels like we are entitled to it.
Yeah.
But it feels wrong to give it. We're not sure they deserve it. We doubt that, we question when it comes to other people, that want mercy and forgiveness. We wonder if they really deserve it. It feels wrong for us to give it, but man, it's so right. And forgiveness is hard, right? I mean,
and it's not really about whether they deserve it or not.
Right.
Jesus doesn't say forgive these people if they deserve it. No, he says forgive them, period.
Yeah. But again, I mean, this is something we all struggle with. I mean, I'm sure, Pastor Jeff, we've got a listener that is struggling to forgive their ex who is trying to make their life miserable.
Yeah, I'm sure.
We've probably got listeners who have got a neighbor who makes living in your home difficult. Maybe you've got a coworker or supervisor or a boss that constantly puts you down, or a friend who betrayed you, or a spouse who said something in the heat of an argument. How do I forgive that spouse who cheated on me? How do I forgive that relative who abused me? That boss who unfairly treats me? How do I do it? When I'm hurt, I really have three choices, don't I? I mean, I really have three choices.
Yeah, you really do. I mean, you can, and we'll stick with the R's here. You can repress it, which means you kind of just box it up and don't think about it, don't talk about it, and that's unhealthy because eventually that's going to come out. You'll never truly be over that. You can replay it in your mind.
Yeah, boy, so many times that's
over and over.
Happens,
I should have said, or I should have done.
Yes.
You can replay that hurt in your mind, and all that's going to do is just drive that root deeper and make that pain deeper and harder. Or, I think this is what God wants us to do. You should, number 3, be able to release it and just let it go, like the song from Frozen.
I was going to say, it sounds like a Frozen song, dude, for you and your daughter.
We'll just leave it there.
And we realize that is a hard thing to do. Our topic today might have stirred up something in you. We would love to hear from you, the listener. You can send us an email at otw@fincastlebaptist.org.
You've been listening to On the Way with Pastor Kevin and Pastor Jeff. Do you have a question for the pastors? Feel free to email us at otw@fincastlebaptist.org. To listen to more On the Way, visit fincastlebaptist.org/ontheway. Or subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks for joining us while you are on the way.